Hey guys, I want to do a little video to explain something called the Hegelian Dialectic to you guys. This is something that's really important to understand if you're going to understand what's happening in the world. Try to figure out who's behind all the weird stuff that's going on in the world and how it is that they're accomplishing their goals. Now, the Hegelian Dialectic is a philosophy, a political philosophy, what have you, that was formulated by Friedrich Hegel, who's a German philosopher back in the 19th century. Okay, and basically the formula of the Hegelian dialectic is like this: thesis on one side, antithesis on the other side. Smash them together in conflict with each other, and eventually you achieve synthesis. Okay, so you create the thesis on the one side. You create an opposing side that you can call the antithesis. Each have elements of something that you want to accomplish eventually. You put them in conflict with one another, and in the end, you are able to achieve, through that conflict, through that give and take, you're able to achieve synthesis. And the synthesis is what your goal was all along. This is what you really wanted to accomplish in the beginning. So that's the Hegelian dialectic. You're creating the problem, you're creating the solution, so to speak, and between the problem and the so-called solution, you end up achieving your real goal, which is the synthesis, okay? So the person who is creating the situation isn't really in favor of this side or that side. He's using both sides to manipulate everyone into coming to a consensus in the middle, which is what he has wanted all along. Okay, now let's apply that to the news today. We see a lot of really crazy stuff happening in the news, things that don't really make sense. Even on the surface of things, they don't really make sense. But if you know what's back of it all, it starts to make sense. When you start to apply the Hegelian dialectic to it, you start to see that the same people are involved over here as are involved over here, even though they pretend to hate each other. Really, they're working together, aren't they? They're working together kind of behind the scenes. It's sort of, it famously was put once before, that it's like professional wrestlers. On the TV screen, they pretend like they hate each other, but when the TV cameras are off, they're going to dinner together and they hang out with each other's families, okay? They're friends. So this is kind of what's really happening in the world here. You have supposedly this enemy and this enemy over here. They hate each other, but in reality, behind the scenes, they're both being manipulated by the same person or the same group of people or the same overarching entity for the end goal. Okay, now a good example of this would be in the last 150 years would be fascism and communism. Okay, now many historians have pointed out the fact that there's a lot of similarities actually between Nazi fascism and communism. In the end, the state has complete control and is able, the dictator is able to do whatever he wants with whoever he wants in either situation. So in a lot of ways you have similarity, but there's some differences there. With fascism, you're allowed to have religion, but it's the religion the state chooses. Okay, the state gets to decide what your religion is. In fact, it's promoted that you should have religion a lot of times in fascism, because religion can be used as a really potent tool to make people conform to what you want them to do if you have the wrong religion. Okay, so in fascism, you're allowed to have religion. In fact, you're probably required to have religion of some sort, and the type of religion that you have is determined by the dictator in the state, the emperor. Okay, now in communism, you have atheism, typically. Now, how do these two things, if I'm someone who's controlling both sides of that, what am I trying to accomplish here? Why do I have total atheism over here, but but state religion over here. What are we trying to accomplish? Okay, let's put it in real terms. The purpose of communism and the purpose of evolution, the purpose of atheism, is to get people temporarily away from any form of religion so that you can get them away from the real God and the real Jesus Christ. Okay? Communism accomplishes that. It gets people away from any sense of God, the real God. Okay? They spurn the Bible. Jesus Christ is, nothing to them. So that it gets them away from any mention of the Holy Spirit, any of that. So that's the first thing you have to do if you're trying to achieve the goals that we're going to explain here. On the other side, you have fascism, where the state determines your religion and, in fact, enforces that religion. It's a national religion. Everybody's got to go along with it. So first, you divorce people from religion, from God, but people can't live without religion for long. Human beings are not designed that way. We are not designed to live without God. If you keep people, I saw it in China when I lived there. You keep people away from a sense of the eternal, sense of something higher, someone higher than them for long enough, there begins to be a yearning inside of them for someone and something bigger than themselves and something that's eternal instead of something so temporary like we have here. So atheism is temporary. It's a temporary solution, you might say, and it's never meant to be permanent by the people who are really in control of both sides, okay? So communism gets people away from the real God. And the Antichrist, and that's who we're talking about here. The Antichrist has to get people away from the real God first. If he wants to be worshipped himself, he has to get people away from the real God, the real Jesus Christ, from any notion of the Holy Spirit. So communism, evolution, atheism, all of that stuff are useful to that end. Okay, but it is not his goal that we should stay atheist because he wants to be worshipped himself. Okay, the Antichrist wants to be worshipped himself. Now, for us Christians, we know, don't we, that he's the person who's in control of so much of what's going on in the world today. He's the one pulling the strings behind these things. So that's what I'm trying to expand on here. So you get people away from the real God, they start yearning for something higher. They want something higher. There's a thirst in them. So you supply. So over here you got them atheists. So you supply them with the religion you want them to have. That's fascism. Okay. You bring out a religion and say, here's the answer. And you have to follow it. And people will. People will absolutely do it. And what's that religion? Well, it's the Antichrist religion, where Satan and the Antichrist is worshipped. Now, let's apply that to a real world situation. Okay? How do we see that playing out in history? Okay, perhaps it will surprise you to know that it's well known, of course, that World War I was partially ended by the Russians pulling out of the war. Why did they pull out of the war? Because Vladimir Lenin came home to Russia and instigated the communist revolution, overthrew the monarchy, the czars, and managed to get Russia to step out of the war. Okay, that's well known. And then you go forward a few decades, not centuries, to World War II, and suddenly Russia, the communists, and the Germans are at it again. Here's something you need to know. World War I, let's back that up. Who sent Lenin to Russia to form the communist state? Any guesses? Yeah, Kaiser Wilhelm of Germany. Sent him back, gave him 50 million gold German marks. Sent him back to Russia for the purpose of instigating a communist revolution. Think I'm joking? Look it up. It's history. Okay? Really happened. So supposedly this this king of Germany, who's supposedly a Protestant Christian, okay, sends this atheist communist over with millions and millions of Deutschmarks to go institute communism. He needed to subvert an enemy. He's working towards an end goal. Now, it's interesting to note and important to note, Kaiser Wilhelm, despite being a Protestant, was a huge friend of the popes and the Vatican in general. It's a known fact, of course, that he was the one who donated one of the Pope's tiaras, his crown that he wears. It was given to him by Kaiser Wilhelm. So despite being a Protestant, he was very tight with the Pope. And it's this very Protestant German that sends the communist atheist Lenin to Russia to overthrow a Christian government, the Orthodox czars, in order to establish atheist communism in Russia. Now, fast forward a few decades on, and who takes power in Germany? Adolf Hitler. What religion is Adolf Hitler? Well, on the surface, he's a good Catholic, right? And in point of fact, big friend of the Pope. Pope was one of the biggest supporters. Pope Pius was one of the biggest supporters Adolf Hitler had. He was quoted once as saying, "We need to support Adolf Hitler because he's doing God's work." What God? Therein lies the rub. They're both in the service of the Antichrist. They're not in the service of the real God. That's facade. That's a charade for you to see, you and I to see, so that we're deceived. Okay? Behind the scenes, they're all working to the same goal. So we see here the papacy connected to Leninism and the papacy connected to Nazism. Supposedly two sides of the spectrum, two ends of the spectrum. But really, papacy is controlled by the Antichrist spirit. So what's he got to do? He's got to create these two sides so that the conflict between them, which has lasted forever since then, will eventually achieve the synthesis that he wants, which is God, the real God, is out of the picture, just like in communism, but the false God, Satan and the Antichrist, are mandated, just like in fascism. Okay? This is the synthesis that's being achieved here. Now we can look at some other things that are going on in the world and see the Hegelian dialectic being played perfectly in front of our eyes as well. You know, a lot of people can't understand why in the world ISIS and Islam are so predominant, so powerful in the world today. And of course, if you look at them and the resources they have, no one in their right mind could possibly think they are actually that powerful by themselves. Okay, they don't have the resources, they don't have the expertise, they don't have the wherewithal. Mostly the resources. They're perfectly smart, they're perfectly capable. They just don't have the resources. They're getting it from somewhere else. Who and why? Why are they doing this? Okay, who is supplying them, and why are they doing so? Okay, who's been getting real buddy with Islam lately? Who at every turn calls the Muslims brothers of Christians, brothers and sisters of Christians? Who at every turn makes it his point to laud that religion and say we're worshiping the same God? Oh yeah, that guy who was involved with Lenin and Hitler, you know, the Pope. You say, oh, it's a different guy in the chair of Peter. It's the same thing. It's the same thing. No matter who's in the chair, it's mostly the same thing, with few exceptions in the last 100 years or so, 200 really, and beyond. Okay, so Islam, and especially ISIS, is a creation of people who are practicing the Hegelian dialectic. You create this problem over here, Islam. Okay, you're going to create a solution over here, which would be like you could have, for example, the U.S. reaction, the Russian reaction, to ISIS. So you create the problem, ISIS. You create the solution, supposedly all these airstrikes by Russia, and you're going to achieve some end goal here. And what is that? Well, ISIS wants to wipe out Christianity and Jews. Interesting. Yeah, real Christianity and Jews. Okay, so ISIS works to that end over here. Okay, and then on the other side you have the Western powers, the so-called secular powers, but who still have some value for Christianity, especially Russia. You have Orthodox Christianity. Okay, so you have something that resembles Christianity over here with the Western powers and Russia. And over here you have something that wants to annihilate Christianity. So what's the end goal? Annihilate real Christianity and all the Jews, and replace it with a false Christianity. The Antichrist Christianity under Satan, and the Antichrist and the false prophet. Does it make sense now? You see that the two sides seemingly have opposing goals, but in reality there's key kernels in each one that are desired by the planners as one end goal. Okay? We could go on and on about this. There's no need. Hegelian dialectic is employed all the time. Think about, you could think about any political situation in the world pretty much, and you're going to see this. So when you're watching the news, pay attention to this. When you're reading stuff on the internet and you're like, that doesn't make any sense. Why are they doing that? There's a goal behind it that you would never think of because you're not that kind of person. But they would, because they serve the Antichrist and they serve Satan. And he's got a master plan. Satan has a master plan, and he gives it to his servants to do. Okay? Satan is the master user of the Hegelian dialectic, and he's been using it for so long. So anyway, not to belabor the point, but when you see crazy stuff happening in the world, another good example, the American presidential election. Come on, guys. You don't really believe any of that's real, do you? Come on. Hillary Clinton versus Trump. It's all staged. It's all fake. That behind the scenes, they're all working for the same goals. It's a stage show to make you think that you have choices, to make you think that someone still cares about you. They don't care about you. They're using you. Don't be a tool. Anyway, if you have any questions about this or comments or whatever, please feel free to leave them either on my Facebook page or on the YouTube page. Anyway, God bless you, and may the Lord guide you into all his wisdom and knowledge so that you can have understanding in these last days. May the Holy Spirit lead you to a greater knowledge of Jesus Christ and to know his way, not the Antichrist way. God bless.